The NBA bubble and crying YouTubers prove that we as humans need one another, and I'm going to spend the rest of this video showing you how. Welcome to Everything to Everyone, a platform dedicated to using everything with the hopes of reaching everyone. If you like the videos that we've been coming out with on this channel, we would ask that you consider subscribing and clicking on the notification bell below so you can be notified every time we come out with a new video. Enjoy. At the time of recording, the NBA is nearing the finals of its 2019-2020 season. It's been a season rife with interesting storylines, with the feeling from fans that the league is being hypocritical by their decrying of domestic social issues while also supporting China, and in admittedly much less consequential merit, the Houston Rockets further ushering in a style of small ball, aggressive three-point shooting, and the list goes on. But one of the most important parts of this season was its suspension due to COVID-19. On the night of the suspension, the Oklahoma City Thunder were slated to face off the Utah Jazz, and this game pretty much acted as a precursor to the upcoming postseason because both of these teams were vying for a top 8 spot in the Western Conference. Right before tip-off, a voice came over the intercom of the Chesapeake Arena that stated,
"The game tonight has been postponed. You are all safe. And take your time in leaving the arena tonight and do so in an orderly fashion. Thank you for coming out tonight."
Now, frankly, no other sentence has been uttered in the history of sentences to give me more pause and put me under the impression that I'm not safe than "you are safe." From there, the season was suspended, and the first notable case of COVID-19 in the NBA was none other than Utah Jazz center Rudy Gobert. That was the moment that I got clarity on the threat that COVID-19 posed worldwide. And from there, the year simply wasn't the same. I'm sure that in mid-March, your world changed too. It's been an interesting year to say the least. But even through the global response, the inaction of lockdown policies in most states, and the sheer volume of opinions spouted on Facebook, one of the most remarkable things to me was bookended by both the suspension of the NBA season and its subsequent resumption. The NBA, its players, its coaches, and its referees got together to conceptualize what a season restart might look like, and ultimately they came up with what would affectionately be known as the NBA bubble. As talks continued and emotions flared, the season eventually restarted in Orlando, Florida. It was then that an interesting phenomenon occurred. With the resumption of the postseason, I began to see the online NBA forums that I frequent light up again, with conversations on individual player performance, posting different stat lines, and analyses on coaches and player strategy. Small talk became viable again, as I was able to make mention of last night's game with acquaintances that are vastly complemented by the discussion of sports. As those discussions raged on, the NBA bubble became an interesting peek into the life of NBA players. Players began to document their experience on social media, some complaining about their accommodations, namely Rajon Rondo saying that his Disney hotel was similar to a Motel 6. Other players took to Instagram Live, namely J.R. Smith, who complained that the food provided by the NBA wasn't fit for world-class athletes. It wasn't all negative though. And what ended up happening was that NBA players that may have once seemed impersonal to an audience that wasn't always checking out pressers and post-game conferences became three-dimensional. One thing that contributed to this process was the uploading of NBA bubble vlogs on YouTube. First and quite possibly best at the bubble vlogs was Matisse Thybulle, a rookie on the Philadelphia 76ers. His 9-part Welcome to the Bubble series shot his new YouTube channel to immense success, accruing over 100,000 subscribers at the beginning of July. These videos covered daily life in the bubble, social activities, meals, conversations between different players, and more. Hanging out at the pool, cornhole tournaments, conversation around the topic of racial injustice brought forth by the George Floyd killing. All of these things were captured in the Welcome to the Bubble vlogs and rendered NBA players into people with opinions and preferences, likes and dislikes. After a while, I felt like these players were my friends, people that I knew and understood and could joke around with. Something that was so refreshing as lockdown policies and limits on social gatherings persisted in my state. I began to realize something that I may have known subconsciously, but I didn't fully acknowledge. YouTubers, Twitch streamers, the internet in general have made way for the bypassing of the difficult process of making friends in favor of the online personalities and relationships with which we don't have to work really hard. Let me be clear. This video is not a boomer-esque indictment on being on your phone or the internet too much, but rather a plea to identify the beauty of engaging with someone's online content and taking that drive into developing one-on-one relationships in a community. The data is clear on showing the effects of social media on young people. We've seen the numbers of anxiety and depression skyrocket since the advent of the smartphone, and developing deep, meaningful interpersonal relationships is one way that we can see a change in those statistics. I'm optimistic that this phenomenon will highlight the need for friendship and community rather than squander it. And what is friendship at its core? Why does social media use and consuming video content seem to take the place of crucial interpersonal relationships? I would contend that social media interactions and an attraction to YouTubers act as a shortcut to developing deep and meaningful interpersonal relationships. And Aristotle's timeless advice on friendship is one of the ways that we can identify it. Aristotle theorized that there were 3 types of friendships in our lives: friendships of utility, friendships of pleasure, and friendships of virtue. Friendships of utility are mutually beneficial, with social or business advances being a common feature of them. Friendships of pleasure are based around superficial things, whether it's video games, sports, or makeup. They only get deep so long as those interests persist. Once the season ends or you start playing a different video game, those friendships effectively end. But friendships of virtue can endure all types of difficulty. They're the type of friendships that are willing to discuss difficult subject matter while remaining unscathed. As interests evolve and change, these friendships remain because they're based on shared values and a mutual appreciation of each other's virtue. These are the kind of friendships that are willing to answer a call at 3 a.m. and provide a shoulder to cry on. It's in this way that crying YouTubers and Matisse Thybulle's NBA Welcome to the Bubble vlogs act as a shortcut and make us feel as though we have developed those meaningful and deep friendships of virtue. YouTubers and their frequent crying apologies let us into the most intimate moments of their lives. You wouldn't just cry in front of anybody. Being witness to those kind of moments, the nostalgic conversations between NBA players, they activate a subconscious reaction, and we become deeply reverent of these content creators. Like I said, I'm not trying to dissuade you from engaging with people's video content. As a matter of fact, I love YouTube and I love following unique creators. But this kind of pseudo friendship doesn't hold a candle to people knowing you, truly knowing you. Community is an essential part of the human experience. People to confide in that are a mere text or call away will keep you on the right track. Those kind of friendships are great sources of personal development, as they're willing to highlight areas in our lives where we're going in the wrong direction. Those kind of friendships are willing to call us out without fear of losing the relationship. In moments of our lives where we experience a sense of deep loneliness or fear of failure, you can't rely on friendships of utility or friendships of pleasure to propel you forward. And if we're being honest, these friendships of virtue are hard to come by. I've heard it said that if you've got one true friend, you're blessed by God. If you've got two true friends, you're lucky. If you've got three true friends, you're a liar. This saying resonates because you know if you've got one true friend, how much sacrifice it took to develop the friendship and keep it. You probably had to sacrifice a lot of money to buy them McChickens because they didn't have the cash on them. If you were young with close friends, you probably had to give up a lot of coveted PS2 time because they argued that you get to play it all the time and they can only play it when they're at your house. Fulfilling lifelong friendships are hard to come by, but they are worth it. And if you feel like you're just wandering aimlessly looking for a friend, let me give you a simple hack. Dive deep into community. Whether it's a small Twitch channel chat or a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dojo or a church, find a place that's likely to house people your age and your stage of life, and it becomes infinitely easier to find a friend. It's also important that you first be a friend. The golden rule reigns supreme here. Treat others the way that you want to be treated. I realize you may be watching this feeling as though you have exhausted every effort to find and make friends. But you've got to go where they are. Communities provide a place where people with shared values and shared interests congregate. And if you share those values and you share those interests, you're likely to find people with which you can develop those friendships of virtue. I also love the way that Jesus describes friendship. Not just friendship with one another, but the kind of friendship that he desires with his people. In John 15:15, he says of people who follow him, "I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you." Imagine that. As Christians, we're persuaded that Jesus is God in human form, and God at the same time. The one who merely spoke and created expanding universes. The one that created life, time, and people wants friendship with the ones that he himself created. If you're in a slump emotionally or spiritually, and you find yourself stunted in developing Aristotelian friendships, you've got to realize that you can experience deep, meaningful, and mutual friendship with the creator of the universe should you decide to follow him. The book Jesus First, Jesus Always by my pastor, Jeffrey Smith, goes into detail on this point. And also the book Friend of Sinners by Rich Wilkerson Jr. is built around this premise that Jesus wants friendship with his creation. I would definitely recommend these books if you want to learn more about the friendship that can be found with the creator of the universe. In summary, don't settle for the supposed friendships of virtue that are found online, but dive deep into community. Find people that are your age and your stage of life and make a deliberate effort to develop meaningful, lifelong friendships. Nothing can replace those. Thanks for watching. This is Everything to Everyone.